morning. It is Monday, the 17th of April, 2023. You're joining me, Graham Hughes, on Morning Brew with some excellent news. My co-presenter now, Phil Morehouse, will be doing these shows every Tuesday and Thursday for the foreseeable future. So if you enjoy watching either me or Phil or both of us, I don't know, that's up to you. You are very welcome to join us in these live little chats about what's in the news. So I thought I'd kick off today. First of all, say hello to everyone. Hello, everyone. Talking a little bit about Sudan. Sudan has had a little bit of a tumultuous past over the last several decades, and more since the turn of the 21st century, we've seen the appalling conditions in Darfur and also the breakaway of South Sudan, which became an independent nation in July of 2011, I think. And so one of the more recent things that happened was there was a bit of a coup. There was a coup that occurred about 3 years ago, and the leader, al-Bashir, he was kicked out, and the military took over effectively. Now, what's happening in Khartoum at the moment, and Khartoum, don't forget, so you've got the Darfur region, it's been fighting there, you've had suffering there, and then you've had the breakaway Republic of South Sudan, and obviously that civil war rumbled on for many years, and it still hasn't really been resolved. There's still border skirmishes there, but it's never taken place in the capital, Khartoum. And now these things are actually happening in the capital of Sudan, Khartoum. Over 100 people have been killed. Over 100 people have been killed over the weekend. And what it is, and this might inform something involving something akin to what might happen in Russia. There were two military leaders. There was one of the army, the regular army, and then there was another of a kind of quasi-army militia type thing, like a Wagner type group. And they conspired to get rid of the former leader. They got ganged up and said, right, we're going to get rid of this guy. And then there was there's an ensuing power struggle over who should be the leader out of the two men who did this coup. And hundreds of people, well, at least 100 people have died so far. Peacekeepers and people wanting to end the violence are heading into Khartoum as we speak, I think. And hopefully the situation calms down soon. But it does seem kind of crazy that you can have a situation where... Sorry, Murray Wilson says South Sudan is not a breakaway republic. Okay, well, it's still called Sudan. I mean, it shouldn't have been all one country in the first place. I was going to talk about the history of the region. Like, the people down in South Sudan are generally animists or Christians, whereas the north of North Sudan is Muslim, majority Muslim. However, yeah, you're right. It's not a breakaway republic in the way that it's not recognized by other countries in the world. Obviously, South Sudan is a member of the United Nations. It is an independent nation in its own right. So, yeah, I didn't mean it like that. Okay, so you're kind of right. Sorry, I didn't mean it in that respect. I meant it had broken away from the rest of Sudan. But yeah, talking about the situation there, I hope it gets better before it gets worse. But it does boggle the mind, the amount of power that just two people can have. The power over life and death of so many people. And we're seeing this time and time again, all around the world, not just with Putin and people like that, and what the Chinese leader Xi Jinping is doing in the northwest of China, in the Xinjiang province, where the Uyghurs live, who are being they're being put into concentration camps, and the world is looking on and going, oh, that's terrible, shouldn't do stuff about that. But the amount of power in one person's hands. And then talking about that, just to segue into another one of my particular topics that I like to talk about a lot, there's been another massacre in America, another one over the weekend, and apparently mass shootings. I think it's 4 people die in a mass shooting in the last year. This year so far, there's been 1.5 mass shootings a day. In the UK, we haven't had 1.5 mass shootings in a decade. I mean, like 1.5. That is just That is so many. And yeah, no one wants. Well, the will to do something about it isn't there. But I'll come back to that. Animist, as in polytheist. Well, it depends. Sometimes it's ancestor worship. Sometimes it's just the old ways. And don't forget, a lot of the way that Western or Arabic religions are performed in Africa is mixed with a lot of African, in different countries, obviously, rituals and traditions. That's why you have this sort of crossover of things like voodoo in West Africa, which you might find a bit strange if you're going, this country is nominally Christian. Yeah, Côte d'Ivoire. It's got this massive basilica, hasn't it, in Côte d'Ivoire? I think it's bigger than the one in Rome and the one in Vatican City. And then you've got sort of like, if you think about the way Mexicans still have the Day of the Dead, which is an old traditional thing for Mexico before it was colonized by the Spaniards, and it's mixed with Christianity, it's mixed with Catholicism. So yeah, it's just the way things go. Reagan Elite says, yes, 4 people were killed, and this over the NRA convention taking place as well. I mean, the NRA is probably the most successful lobbying group in the history of the world, which is yeah. Bad Bones 777 says, oh, that's terrible. Shame they make all our consumer goods really cheaply. I guess we'll do nothing. Talking about China there. Yeah. I mean, it's not just that they make all the consumer goods. It's that they're very, very big and very, very rich. I mean, not per person, perhaps, but as a country, they're very rich. And now they're very powerful in a way that they just weren't before. And there's always that worry that they'll overexert their power, as we're seeing in the South China Seas, but also over the Spratly Islands, these little islands that are claimed by about 7 different nations. And yeah, China, I think that the West kind of wants China to be their friend, but at the same time, they're very kind of concerned about what China could do with its power that it currently has. And unfortunately, the leader has now made himself leader for life, which is never a good sign. But yeah. So we've got Dave there, we've got Reagan Elite, we've got David, Warburton Burnley saying woot. That's great, gotta love Phil. Yeah, Phil is just an absolute legend, and he's agreed to help get this channel off the ground. The reason why we have Labour Social, and we should talk about this a little bit before we go back into the news. The reason why we have Labour Social, why we set it up, is that A, we feel like Labour's social media output could be a little bit better. And B, we want to have a situation in which me and you and Phil and other YouTubers, TikTokers, people who make this kind of content can have a two-way conversation with our Labour MPs, because it does look like they're probably going to win next year. Touch wood, you never know. But hopefully, if they win next year in the general election, then they're going to be in government. And one of the things that I hate about the Tories, amongst many things, is the fact that they do not listen. They are not interested in having a two-way conversation. What they'll do is they'll come up to you and say, this is what you want. And when you say, no, it isn't, they go, yeah, this is definitely what you want. And it's kind of like, I'm pretty sure it's not. I'm like, no, we've said it now, so it must be true. And then you look at the polls and you find that this policy that they've got is wildly unpopular, and well over 70% of the country does not agree with it, whether it's smart motorways or whether it's their horrific refugee policy or whether it's dumping literally gigalitres of effluent into all of our watercourses in this country. I mean, take your pick. There's a lot. But yeah, so we want a Labour Party in power, but we also want a Labour Party in power to have some accountability and accessibility. So that's what we're trying to build here. So if you want to be part of this journey, you're here at the start, so thank you. We really appreciate it. And yeah, if you don't like my style of doing things, Phil will be here tomorrow. Do you know that the composer Richard Wagner was considered anti-Semitic? Yes, we were taken paramilitaries called the Wagner Group, taken from his name. Putin uses the term denazification, of course, yes. He's going to denazify a country that's literally run by the president's Jewish and the prime minister's Jewish. Yeah, let's get rid of all those Nazis. But as I pointed out to someone, an American, a while ago, he's like, yeah, but they had to invade because of all the Nazis there. And I was just like, well, what if it was Mexico, right? And they had invaded Texas because of all the Nazis there, and they needed to protect the Mexicans in Texas. Would that be all right? He's like, no, that'd be completely different. Okay. The support of military command is often crucial to pulling off a coup. I genuinely think this is why Trump's coup failed. Yeah, Christopher, I think you're absolutely right. I think that if the army had gone along with it, then yeah, we would be living in a horrible world in which Trump is the dictator of America, with the weird support of a lot of people who can't really articulate why they support him or why he's good. He just upsets the libs. That's the thing that people like, I guess. I don't know. One angry pagan says, I did a video explaining how Jews were trying to blame paganism for the January 6th riot. No, what? Okay. I've not really heard about that, but when you say the Jews, I mean, it's kind of like a little bit tainted, that expression, because I'm sure it's not all of them, or even the majority of them, or even more than, like, I don't know, 2. There's bad people in every walk of life. But yeah, bit uncomfortable with that, mate. It would help a mile if Labour did adopt a social media presence they need to once they're in power. Yeah, Master Templar, I think it's going to be difficult for Labour to get into power if they don't establish a social media presence, especially considering that the Tories are doing everything in their ability to try and put young people off voting. We're going to see this in a couple of weeks' time when we have the local elections in a lot of the constituencies around the country. You're going to see that people are turning up without ID. That is allowed because over 1 million people don't even know that they'll need ID to vote in the upcoming local elections. It's a local election. It has low turnout anyway. Young people often have better things to do than to get involved in politics. We know this. This is a fact. So if a young person wants to vote, we should be doing everything to encourage that. And do you know what one of the weirdest sort of takes on this that the Tories have come out with? I think it was a Tory MP or maybe just a Tory gob on a stick. But he said, oh yeah, but what about when Labour said that they wanted to bring in voting for 16-year-olds, eh? And it was like, so what? Because that would be expanding the electorate. Okay, how does that? What? So you're literally comparing restricting access to being able to vote to expanding the franchise. Okay. Yeah. But to them, it's one and the same. Thankfully, I'm in Wales, so that's not been adopted as far as I'm aware. That's good news for you. Right-wing propaganda, yes, they always blame the Jews. Well, that's one of the reasons why I'm very uncomfortable with conspiracy theories, because they nearly always end with the line, oh yeah, the Jews did it, which is something that I do not like people to say, because first of all, it's not true, and secondly, it leads to things like the Holocaust, for God's sake. Yeah, but what about Labour wanting more democracy? The monsters. I know, trying to give more people a vote. But the argument was that because the Tories are trying to discourage young people from voting using voter ID and other methods, and redistricting, gerrymandering. Let's just call it gerrymandering. It's easier to say, weirdly. But yeah, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. That's protecting democracy. But trying to open up democracy so more people vote and more people get interested in politics. No. That's an affront to democracy. Okay. What's Keir Starmer saying about voter ID laws as much as Brexit? See, I think you're absolutely right, mate. I do feel very uncomfortable at how the Labour leadership has decided to take a neutral position on a lot of these Tory issues that I would like to see them really, really condemn and say this is outrageous, this is wrong. And if I do have a criticism of Keir Starmer, I've got a few. I think he's too timid. And then this attack ad that came out last week, and I talked to Phil about this a lot. And we were discussing whether it was a good idea or a bad idea. Obviously, that's something the Tories would do, etc. I was a bit uncomfortable with them going in with child abuse as the first thing to hang around the Tories' neck. because I felt it was a little bit opportunist and a little bit insensitive as well. I would have gone in with another attack first. But because it just seemed to come out of the blue, it did feel a bit incongruous. You know, like someone who's really quiet in school or at work, and then they go to a party and they have a drink and they just turn into this lunatic and start bouncing around, and you're like, whoa, what happened to you? It was a bit like that, wasn't it? It was a bit kind of like, wasn't really expecting you to sort of put out an advert like this. So in a way, yeah, good. At least they're causing engagement. They're causing people to talk about their advert. They're talking about Rishi Sunak's failure as a prime minister, as a well, I would say as a human being, but as a the Tory party's failure in office for the last 13 years. I think it's kind of fair enough, but at the same time, it didn't feel like it just seemed to come out of the blue, and I think that's not really something that you want to have as part of a campaign, like an ongoing campaign to... Do you know what I mean? Do you remember those Benetton adverts in the 90s where it was like a car that had been blown up by the IRA, or it was I don't know, someone covered in blood or something? I can't remember, but they were like shocking adverts that Benetton would put up. The United Colours of Benetton. And it was only so people would talk about their adverts and they'll get loads more sales. It felt a bit like that. It felt like, okay, good, you've got the people's attention, but I don't know if that was what you should have led with. That's my 2 cents on that matter. The EU wants to make sure that the UK is fully behind the will to become an EU member and not leave again once the ruling party changes again. And so far, large parts cannot openly admit it was a mistake. Yeah, Aaron, I think it's going to take a while. Come on, you think about how difficult it is to people just to admit they've made a mistake in general, and then times that by 17.4 million. Yeah. Those who instantly blame Jews or indulge in othering of any kind needs to read the poem First They Came, ... Yes, indeed. Hayon says, hearing Truss and Johnson talk about the deep state is truly disgusting. They're amongst the most powerful people in the world. If the deep state does exist, they're it, morons. Yeah, I mean, Trump does that very successfully. Because anything bad that happens, he can blame on the deep state or George Soros, who's Jewish. Funny that. But yeah, him and his ilk are just like, no, it's not us. It's not us. It's the same that when Jacob Rees-Mogg calls you and I the metropolitan elite. Literally. No, and there's a line, isn't there, by one of the Nazis, like Goering or someone who said, accuse your opposition of what you yourself are guilty of, and that's very true when I hear people like Dominic Cummings, who went to Durham private school here in Durham, Durham High School, I think. I don't know, it's just called Durham, yeah, he says, oh, you know, the metropolitan. He talks about the metropolitan elite. His family own a massive holding just on the outskirts of the city centre here in Durham. You're the one that he spent a large part of lockdown in, yeah, that he wasn't supposed to drive to, yeah. And then he drove to Barnard Castle, which is like miles away. It's like a 45-minute drive along like a lot of rickety little A roads to get to Barnard Castle. If you've got to test your eyes, probably the worst ways of doing it, I think. It's a bad look. The Tories do this all the time, and now they can say, we do it now. Yeah, Christopher, I'm minded to agree with you on that, yeah. About the Labour attack ad. A lot of Remainers are still holding out for their precious opt-outs from Euro, Schengen, etc. This is a problem. I'm not. I'm all for Schengen and Euro, and I think everyone should have to be made to speak German. Just for giggles. Joke. Don't at me. Good morning, says Nick and Diff. Hiya. They should have just said, Rishi Sunak wants to make you pay to see your GP. That would have been more effective. Lee, that is why you should be in charge of Labour Party comms, and possibly not the person in charge of Labour Party comms. But yeah, I think that would have been way more effective. Way more effective. You got to think about who you're trying to entice as well. You're not trying to get people who are necessarily that bothered about children. I don't mean that in a horrible way. I just mean there's a lot of people out there who don't care at all about children, not even their own children. If they did, they'll do more about, I don't know, climate change or pouring all the sewage into our rivers. Labour's poster is only half as dirty as the Tories. Don't bring a toothpick to a gunfight. Indeed. I like that expression. Personally, I want to see us back in the EU, the Schengen, and using the Euro. Yep, so do I. I don't want Charles. I don't want a picture of Charles and Camilla. Maybe no, it can't be and Camilla because they're not king and queen in that same respect. Because, yeah, so just be... I don't want pictures of Charles in my wallet. People are like, oh, we got to keep paper money because there's all these things you can do with paper money that you can't do with a credit card. Give money to the homeless. That's very noble, and buy some penny sweets, I guess. I don't know. And buy drugs. I wouldn't know. But I get that. But at the same time, I don't want pictures of I don't want little pictures of Prince Charles sausage fingers in my wallet myself. Goebbels says Johnny Copperhead. Well, that's who it was. He was Hitler's propaganda minister, wasn't he? We don't care about opt-out. Sorry, I'm just moderating your language there a little bit, Vendetta. We want our rights back, which were stolen from us by Putin and his Tory puppets and the morons who voted for them. Indeed, I couldn't put it better myself. George Soros is a dog whistle for the GOP so they can attack Jews without using the word. That is absolutely true. Stephanie Wilson, can't argue with that. Are you named in that new book about the liberal metropolitan elite, Graham? No, I don't know. This is a book by a boy, a thing, that went to a private school, and he was interviewed about it by Matthew Statlin? No, it wasn't Matthew Statlin. It was one of the LBC presenters who also went to private school, and they were like, "Yes, well, who was a former Tory advisor, I think." And I listened to the whole interview on Tuesday, and it was just mind blowing. It was these two very, very posh people who talk about the working class. You can tell they're not working class because they pronounce it class, and no one who is working class pronounces it working class. Anyway, so they were saying about. But this guy's written a book. It's like number 3 on the Times bestseller list. And in it, he talks about how the metropolitan elite have taken over somehow, while the Tories have been in charge for the last 13 years. Like I've said this before, I'm 44 and 31 of my years on this planet, in this country, I've been under Tory rule. 31 years of Tory rule since 1979. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of Tory rule right there. A lot of Tories ruling the place. But apparently, people who don't have much money, who come from different ethnic backgrounds and have different sexualities and maybe feel like they should be transgender, or maybe they are transgender. They're really controlling everything if you think about it. Those powerless people who can't stop the government from doing horrible things to their own community. Yeah, they're the ones really. If you think those refugees coming up, they're really. It's kind of painful. And what can you do? And it is a bit weird, isn't it? Like the very people who in the 1950s would have been screaming about communism and how evil communism is. Why? What's wrong with communism? Because they want us to be all the same. Okay. So what do you think you're doing when you say that people shouldn't be gay, or people shouldn't be trans, or people shouldn't come from other countries and live in your country? Is that not a form of communism? What about the fact that we all get paid bugger all, except for the oligarchs in charge, who make all the money and steal the money from us? That doesn't just sound like communism. That sounds like Stalinism. That's like communism plus plus. That's like some twisted form of communism that's got away from its original message and just become absolutely steeped in disgusting greed, but is being sold to people as this amazing, wonderful nirvana in the sky. This is amazing. Look at this utopia that we've built for ourselves, where everyone's the same. Everyone thinks the same. Everyone loves the same people. Everyone hates the same things. Yeah, everyone being all the same. Yeah, don't read a book that might give you some funny ideas about other stuff. Yeah, because that wouldn't be very democratic now, would it? Let's burn down the library so this never happens again. Freckles says, do people care about the symbolism of the pound as much as they'd done 30 years ago, especially given how cash is virtual these days and society has become more cashless? I don't think they care as much, but what I would have done back in the year 2000, as Busted never sang, because that was the year 3000, I would have pegged the pound to the euro. That's it. 1-to-1. It's worth a euro. You can swap them. Like a Scottish pound is worth an English pound. Yeah, just like that. And in Hong Kong, you've got loads of different Hong Kong dollars, depending on which bank you get your Hong Kong dollars from. So you can get like HSBC dollars in Hong Kong. It's kind of weird, but you can. And you get all these different notes, depending on which bank has issued them. It's very strange. Not being in the euro is useful if you need to do quantitative easing, stimulus, kept the UK out of the even worse situation in 2008 by keeping pound. Yeah, but also you don't have the backup. So Greece well and truly mucked up its finances, it's fair to say. And yeah, they were forced to bring in austerity, whereas we chose to bring in austerity. We didn't really have to do that. We just did. And it was a disaster and made loads of people poorer and put 1 million children into poverty. Yeah, but Greece was kind of forced, well, it was forced to adopt austerity by the EU in order to get itself out of debt. One of the problems with the euro is that the borrowing rate wasn't the same for all different countries. So if Germany wanted to borrow a load of euros, they'd only paid an interest rate of, say, 0.5%. Whereas if Greece wanted to borrow the same amount of euros, the same amount of the same currency, they'll be paying an interest rate of, say, 2.5%. And then I'm oversimplifying that ridiculously, and I'm not an economist, thank God. If you want to correct me in the chat about how it actually worked. But yeah, the support was actually there from outside, and maybe if Greece wasn't part of the euro, it might not have got that support. I don't know. Have you seen the mess the government has made of our economy? Our currency is worthless now. Well, it's yeah, it's not exactly worthless, but it's worth less than it was before the Brexit vote. Since 2016, the pound is pretty much worthless, dropping like a rock. Well, it's recovered a bit of its value in the last few days, but it's not much compared with what it was. I mean, don't forget, 20 years ago, the pound was nearly up to $2 a pound. $2 a pound. Now it's $1.25 or 26, something like that. So not great. Euro system needs tweaking, says Jim Bob. I don't disagree. There's lots of things in the EU that I would like to see done better. Public transport, trains, so the trains all use the same signalling systems all over the continent, which would make so much more sense than the system we have now, where we have different signals for each train, and even each train system almost. And even though like the train tracks are the same distance apart, not the same trains can run on those tracks, depending if they're going over borders and things like that. Needs to be way more integration in public transport. Refugees, the way that the European Union handles refugees is not great by any stretch of the imagination, and they should have a system in which you're allowed to apply to the EU for asylum, and if your asylum is granted, you are allocated a country that you can choose. You can put your case forward of why you should go to Denmark or why you should go to Spain. The links you have or whatever, but yeah, it should be allocated on GDP and population size of each country, so everyone in Europe takes their fair share. I'd like to see the EU do that. I'd like to see the EU do a lot more when it comes to climate change. A lot more. And I also welcome the EU's insistence on having one charger for every electronic phone. Electronic phone? Oh my God, that sounds so old-fashioned. Get your electronic phones out, kids. I'd like to see them go further and make sure that companies can't get away with things like scheduled obsolescence, where they make sure that things that are a couple of years old don't work anymore or slow down to the point where you have to buy a new one, which is so wasteful, bad for the environment and bad for us as consumers. Scottish Government commissioned and released a report on pagan discrimination, and the results were disgusting. Why is it that people only care when it's one of the monotheistic minorities then? Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that the Hindus in the Tamil Tigers in Sri Lanka will probably have a little bit to say about that, being a polytheistic religion, living in a country that basically got wiped them out about 10 years ago. Yeah, I don't really agree with that notion. I think that any minority is going to be picked on by a majority, and we need to have laws in place to protect discrimination against people for their beliefs or you know, their religion, or, you know, I'm not religious myself, but, you know, each to their own. I don't want to live in a world where we're all the same, because I'm not a communist or a Republican, by the looks of things. I mean an American Republican. I'm a British Republican. I'd like to see done away with the monarchy. I think when the Queen popped the clogs, that should have been the end of it all. No pound shagging on this channel. Lol. Full metrification should also be introduced in the UK with the abolition of all imperial units. The UK misses out on many car models due to right-hand drive markets being the minority in Europe. Well, I don't know if the metric system is going to make us have left-hand drive. But also, yeah, there's lots of countries that have left-hand drive. India's got left-hand drive, and Japan's got left-hand drive, and South Africa's got left-hand drive. So, I mean, there's a lot of places that you can sell left-hand drive cars. But I see your point. Graham, do you think this stupid Brexiteer will talk? Can you not swear, please? On the Eurovision contest. I hope they don't this year. It's in Liverpool. I know. I'm going. I'll see you there. But yeah, I remember the time it was $3 to the pound. Yeah, that's a bit long ago. There's no reason to get rid of the pound. How long has Poland been in the EU? Keeping the pound gives our government better control of the economy, better to nationalise the Bank of England. The Bank of England, yeah, it's kind of a bit of a weird institution, isn't it? It's like an offshoot. It's like a privatised offshoot of government that has to do what the government says but doesn't, because it sets its own rates, but it's under advice from the government. It's very strange. It's a strange way of setting it all up, but they can actually print money if they need to. They can just print some more money. They can just say, yeah, more money exists, whoop-de-doo, and yeah, they can afford to pay things like the test and trace system that cost 37 billion pounds, of which we didn't see any actual trace of the tests and the trace and the testing and the whatever was supposed to happen. It just didn't. Anyway, I keep Gammon hearing Gammon saying things like, we have to change money when we join the EU. Eh? Well, you know, I suppose you can't get it right all the time. Anyway, right, so I'm gonna cut off now because it has been half an hour. So thank you very much for joining me for Morning Brew here on Labour Social. Got my new Labour Social mug. There you go. You can get one of these if you want from our shop. I'll put the link into the chat later. But I won't be here tomorrow. Well, I will be here. I'll be producing. But Phil will be presenting Morning Brew tomorrow at 9:30. So please look out for that. And then afterwards, we should be heading over to the Discord server for an after brew chat. Maybe a little bit of a listen along to James O'Brien. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for all the chat. I like jumping into the chat and having a chat with you. That's the whole point of this. We're having a cup of tea and a natter together. I don't want it to just turn into a lecture where he says, here's what Graham thinks about stuff, because I don't necessarily know what I'm talking about, but I'm good at talking. So thanks very much for watching. I'll leave you with a list of our wonderful patrons. If you would like to become a patron, well, first of all, if you'd like to subscribe to the channel, that would be great. If you want to let us know what you think of this video, leave a message in the comments. If you do want to become a patron, it's patreon.com/Labour Social. Really easy to remember. Okay, so until tomorrow, I'll say thank you for watching. Hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.